Before we dig in, a quick thank you to the sponsors ready to grow with the Soil Sisters. Tejas Tonic is the official beverage of the Texas Soil Sisters. We especially love that the hemp for Tejas Tonic is organically farmed in the Texas Hill Country, with farms in both Dripping Springs and Lukenbach, Texas. The Soil Sisters podcast is powered by B&P Electric. Whether you're building, remodeling, installing low-voltage landscape lighting, or in need of an inspection, B&P is your Central Texas electrical contractor. Find links to our sponsors in the podcast show notes or head over to txsoilsisters.co. Windy Bar Ranch in Stonewall, Texas has been raising Angus cattle in the Texas Hill Country since 1983. Though their ancestors have been raising cattle in Gillespie County since the 1850s. Windy Bar Ranch raises award-winning beef and has continued to focus on the traits that made the Angus breed famous. Find out more about their beef at windybarbeef.com. And Windy Bar Ranch is looking for their next ranch manager to join the team this winter and continue the tradition of responsible land stewardship and stockmanship on this 150-cow pasture-to-plate regenerative Texas ranch. To learn more and apply for the ranch manager position at Windy Bar Ranch, submit your resume on the contact page at txsoilsisters.co. That's txsoilsisters.co/contact. You're listening to the Soil Sisters podcast, where we dig in on family farming and ranching, regenerative agriculture, healthy living, and planting seeds in our community. We invite you to listen, subscribe, and grow with the Soil Sisters. I'm Joanna Newting, joined by my blood, soul, and soil sister, Crystal. Welcome to the show.
Hi, sister.
Hey. I'm so excited. If you're watching the video version, you see two additional faces on the screen. The Soil Sisters are super excited to welcome Kari Collins and Kelsey Kruzona to the podcast. They are a sister duo who has created an amazing skincare line that's coming out soon called True Femme Collective. And these ladies, like us, are all about holistic living. So when we discovered each other, we were super excited to have a conversation about what we're putting on our skin and why. And, thinking about things that I'm not sure people want to think about. So Kari, Kelsey, thank y'all so much for joining us on the show.
Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much. We're really thrilled and honored to be a part of this show with you.
Thank you for your time. I think it would be fun to just jump in to your why, because this will kind of help the whole conversation unfold. When I first talked to you, Kari, you told me that y'all were doing this holistic living thing before it was cool. So tell me about those beginnings for y'all.
Yeah, well, so I like to start with saying it was 1990 and we turned into a family that was homeschooling. My mom was buying organic from co-ops and raw milk, starting to use herbs as medicine and changing our meats, like getting clean meats. And it was not a common practice back then. At the time I was 8 and Kelsey, she was born into it. So I think it was around my mom being pregnant with her that she was having this awareness around vaccines and our foods and health. And so she was really starting to make some changes then. So for me as an 8-year-old, I was pulled out of school. So I was going into 5th grade and pulled out of school, being homeschooled, and went from all these normal things to these very abnormal things. And to be honest, it was a struggle. So I had a lot of wound healing to do from my childhood from that. But as an adult and as I got into it, I saw the benefits of it. So as we went through the 90s into the 2000s, one of the biggest things that happened for our family was my father being diagnosed with cancer. So this was like early 2000s. So we'd been having this really holistic lifestyle for a while, and then he gets this diagnosis. And I remember just that news that came. I was maybe about 20 at that time. And my mom gave him an option because she'd been really deep in just the holistic side, even had a circle of friends with cancer that they were doing a lot of things alternatively. And so she said to my father, she's like, you can, whatever you want to do, if you want to go the medicine route, we'll go the medicine route, like Western medicine. Or if you want to go alternative, we'll go alternative, and I'll back you in whatever way you want to go. And there'd been enough studies that she'd come across that was just showing that if you go alternatively towards any ailment, even, not just excluding cancer, your quality of life is a lot better afterwards. So he'd already had that awareness. And so my dad picked alternative. And what we saw then was like even greater than what I experienced being that young child, and the changes that we made, where she went through the whole house and she started eliminating like the cleaning products, the laundry detergent, the beauty products. Like she's reading labels, she's doing all this research. And at the time, my career, so where I had started initially in a career field, was cosmetology. So like hair, skins has really been my foundation. So here I am in this industry, as we know, is filled with a lot of questionable ingredients. And I'm like deep in it. It's like, what's paying my bills? And then my mom's like, oh, I'm on the phone with her. And she's like, oh, I just threw away X product because it has propylene glycol in it, and that's causing cancer. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's so expensive. Like it was like, what's going on? Like here's another level that we're going into. But the benefit of all that is seeing my father after nine months of being real hardcore. He had a clean bill of health. And so it was from that moment that it like really solidified in me that I'm like, okay, there were some like quacky things, but I'm like, my mom's not this. Like she's on to something. So seeing that, it was like a back pocket thing for me at the time. So it wasn't until I was I would say maybe my mid to late 30s that I really began to take a lot of those practices for myself. I did them like a little bit, but it was like, oh, like a piece and part here and there, and otherwise I'm fine. And I was in that industry for quite some time. I was maybe in the hair side for about 16 years. And then got into the skin side. So when I was in the skin side was when I really started to look at it, because I had terrible skin myself, like just like the worst acne skin, was using everything under the sun to really try and solve my problem. And so it was towards maybe in the last 5 years, I would say 5 to 7 years was when I really started to look at what was going on in my body. And I had that foundation from what I was raised in to be like, all these things my mom talked to me about, all these hidden things that now, like, as we're getting further into it, I'm like, oh, now I'm in the stream of all the alternative now. I really had to start to dig into that and really look into that. But having that foundation behind where we are now, what we're doing, was like, has just been so pivotal. And even too for my own health, like it's come into my marriage. I've helped my husband with ailments and myself. And then Kelsey has her own story that she's done for herself and her son and her husband. And we're just like living this upbringing that our mom did for us. She did pass away. She was born with congenital heart failure, and she passed away suddenly in 2018. And I truly believe, and Kelsey can speak for herself on this, that this line that we're coming forth with has everything to do with that upbringing, and even in honor of our mom. I get choked up when I talk about this, just in honor of what she did for us, that even though, and I was probably the most resistant of the kids, like Kelsey, we have a brother too, and I was probably the most resistant, where I gave them so much flack for all this stuff as a kid. And now I'm like, I chuckle myself because I'm like going to co-ops now, and like I'm using all this clean stuff, and I'm mixing all this clean stuff, and like my clean detergent, my clean cleaning supplies. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm like totally like living my life, reading all these articles. And I'm getting into studies. Like I love reading medical journals, and she did that a lot. And so it's just been, quite a whirlwind and a journey, but just knowing like, I mean, everything is by design. And so all of that stuff from our upbringing, I'm like, it's now where it's going to show up, and it's going to show up in the marketplace with what we're doing and what we're bringing forth.
Yes.
Well, and that's just how it goes. Everything that we've done has brought us to this moment to make us who we are, to be ready to do what's in front of us. And you talking about all of that, Crystal, I'll let you speak to what that brought up for you, because it made me think of you and Dion. And uh-oh. Well, actually, hold that thought. You've gotten her all emotional.
It
Yeah.
is an emotional thing. Like I have some tears that are coming down. I get like choked up.
Sorry, it's gotta.
Yeah.
I was trying to keep it together. I'm like, just let them go, and then it will go much quicker. Just like get
It's all
on through
good.
it. It is all good, and it's so sweet, and this is absolutely wonderful. I have been making my own skincare for over 20 years. I knew in high school that makeup was messing my skin up. Like I remember looking at myself in the mirror and having such smooth brown skin. And then I got into high school and started wearing foundation. And then I would look at myself and it would be pale and splotchy. And I was just like, what happened? This is like between elementary school and high school. And it's makeup that I was wearing. So I was skeptical, and I never was a real makeup-y girl. I wasn't good at it. I didn't care about it. So I was like, what is this? And then I started looking at what was in everything. And I'm like, what is all this stuff? So I've been making like very simple shea butter or coconut oil, beeswax, essential oils, like that kind of. And home, my cleaning supplies are vinegar and baking soda and essential oils. And like, so I did that 20 plus years ago. And my partner was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And we had been like, we knew something, but we were just like, okay, we're doing everything that we can, all these things that we're doing. And she did go in and have some chemo, but that was actually Taxol was the chemo, and that comes from the yew plant. So it was actually a botanical that was the chemotherapy that she used. So anyway, we appreciate it all, but I love that your father came through that and that your mother was like, what's going on here? Let me do some research, and that she passed that down to y'all. And here you are. And I really, really, when Joanna told me that we were going to have this conversation with y'all, I was super excited because, again, I love sisters, and sisters working together is just the most powerful and beautiful thing. Women coming together, because individually we're never as strong as we are together. So thank you.
Yeah. And our mom really, I swear, she like had no fear behind doing unusual things, because she just knew in her gut that she was like, this is right. We need to stay away from this, that, and the other thing. And to speak to what kind of Kari touched on is like, her normal was different than my normal because I was born into it. So to me, that was normal. So like normal of natural remedies, resorting to, herbs or different things like that. I remember there were times when I was a young child and I would get pink eye, and my mom would actually do steeped rose leaves and then like strain through that and use that to actually clear out the pink eye, which worked every time. And I mean, there were just so many things that like, it wasn't weird to me because that was just what we did. I was homeschooled and went into public school in 4th grade. And then that's when things got weird for me because it wasn't normal to other kids. Yeah. And so that's the interesting difference of dynamic between, I guess, me and like how normal upbringing was. But it just goes to show that like so many things there's so many different alternatives than to like over the counter or anything like that. And like that just proved to me that I don't resort to any of that.
Yeah. And we had the influence, or we saw it when we were kids in the 80s. Our Aunt Teresa, she lived a holistic lifestyle. She did not let her kids have sugar and candy and sodas and things like that. And we saw, because, they were around our age. So we saw how that affected them, and how when they weren't around their mom, like they would crave these things. And people thought our aunt was a weirdo because she was doing
Eating
all of
healthy food.
these eating healthy food, using
Yeah.
herbal remedies and things like that. And, over the years, as we've aged and we start doing these things on our own, I always looked Crystal and I'm like, man, like Teresa was on top of this
Yeah,
shit a long time ago.
exactly.
And, so it's like we need these people that, influence us. So it's like as soon as I learn these things, I am preaching to all of my friends, because it's like as women, we need to pass this information on so that everyone doesn't just do facial surgeries and treatments and turning ourselves into, alien looking creatures because we're afraid to age. And so, I am a huge fan of the idea of conscious aging and people that live a holistic lifestyle. That is the natural solution. Just be aware of what we're using and what we're putting on our bodies. And I was laughing because I'm glad we're going to be talking through the woman's cycle, our monthly cycle, and the 4 phases of it, because I'm telling you what, every month I forget that all of these phases happen. And I'm like, what is going on with my skin? Or why am I starving? I feel like I've eaten everything in the house. If I keep doing this, I'm going to weigh 200 pounds. And, like as women, we just are in the moment and we'll forget. So it's nice to have a reminder that, oh, this is normal. This is what's going to be happening at this time in this cycle or whatever. So let's talk about that. Let's get into those 4 phases that women go through and how y'all are solving for that through your formulations.
Totally. I mean, I think that this women's cycle is something that has been so stigmatized, and we really need to start having real conversations around it and normalizing the energetics that happen within our cycle. So, part of my healing journey, I had what I think was a nervous breakdown in 2019. And as I got deeper into studying around health, now I'm a board certified holistic health practitioner. I really started to look at women's health and what was going on because of being a woman. And that's how I got into the woman's phases in the cycle and within the cycle. So when we break down a woman's cycle, so let's start with menstruation. So in menstruation, what's happening for a woman's body? So this is what's happening for us. It's not happening to us, but what's happening is that all of our hormones are low. Everything has dropped down because the body is going through a deep release state. It's like a natural detox process for the woman's body. And so in that time, what the body's going to call for is more rest. Like we are going to naturally feel more tired. The body wants more sleep. It wants you to take a nap. It wants you to go to bed an hour earlier. So if it's calling you to those things during that time, then give into it. So I began to start practicing that in that time and began to see some success come back with that energy fall that I had. And so then in the second phase, so as we get past menstruation, we go into that second phase, all of our hormones or estrogen starts to come back. So our estrogen's more our social hormones. We want to think of that time as springtime. So in springtime, things kind of bloom, they come back in. What's happening for the skin then is we have our collagen production is starting and elastin and all of that, just that lifeblood is coming back, circulation's coming back, everything's just kind of turning back on again. And part of it is because of what it's leading into, which is ovulation. So the body's goal is this whole concept around pregnancy. However, there's a lot more things around ovulation than just having babies. And this is why we should be honoring this cycle. So while we're still in the follicular phase after menstruation and the energy is coming back, and we're seeing that brightness and that glow happen for our skin. Also, that energy is a very active energy, like a great time for pushing yourself, maybe in your workouts or taking a stretch assignment or maybe a bigger trip, like if you were to even schedule trips around your cycle, just pushing. Like that's just a go energy, a very active energy. It's a great time to talk about what it is that you're working on and what you're trying to attract into your life. And then as we get into ovulation, ovulation is a very magnetic energy. So we have this magnetism that's happening for our bodies in this time, that whether it's pregnancy that we're going to conceive, or if it's maybe even manifesting something that we're trying to attract in, that's a great time to start really calling in or seeing what you have called in happen in that time and in that phase. So it's like full bloom at that time. We're in summer and everything is just vibrant. We should be experiencing a full glow if our bodies are in a healthy state. So our face is really glowing and really bright. It's also a great time that skin could have rosacea or redness or irritation if there's some problems that are happening within the body. Studies have shown that women that are ovulating in a room of men and women that are not ovulating in that same room, the men will be more attracted to the women that are ovulating. So what that says to me, again, is just that attracting quality that we have that's built naturally into our cycle. And so it's there existing for us. So it's a great time to capitalize on what it is that you're trying to bring forth in that season. And so then as we go into the luteal phase, so when you were talking about being hungry all the time, it probably shows up in your luteal into menstruation, because in luteal phase, the body actually craves complex carbs and sweet things. So if you pick sweet things from, say, maybe like dates or figs or dried fruits even, they'll have more concentrated natural sugar. Like pick that stuff to kind of satiate that craving that you're happening. That's by design in the luteal phase, because it's what wants to feed progesterone. So progesterone's asking for more complex carbs at that time, more hearty foods, like your root vegetables are great at that time. And in that phase, the estrogen that's there, that's also going to bring back some of that cell turnover that we have, that collagen and that elastin, that firmness that's going on for the skin. That's going to happen in that phase. And it's also a great time to begin to prepare for what it is that you need to release. So a lot of times PMS can show up in that phase because there's things that are out of alignment within our life. And it's a prep time getting into menstruation, because menstruation is the release phase. So if you're
Oh
out of
my
alignment,
gosh. Thank you for saying this.
Mhm.
Well, I just had a lot of stuff going on, and I had an absolute meltdown on like the day before I started my period. And I felt so sorry for the couple of friends who happened to call me on that. I mean, I could not stop crying. I was a mess. And I'm just like, this feels over the top for what's going on. Then the next day, I started my period and I was like, oh, okay, but I don't always PMS like this. So you saying that just clicked.
Yeah.
It's not just the cycle in our body. It is the whole mind, body, relationship, communion, the whole thing. It's all kind of coming together. And so the release is a lot of things.
Our cycle starts in our brain. It starts in our pituitary gland. So we have the pituitary gland has an axis that connects to reproduction. It connects to other areas in our body, but it also connects to reproduction. So that's why all that, the nervous system, the brain, the mind stuff, like it's happening there. Like it's a direct connection to our reproduction. So thinking like pituitary connected to higher self, source, God, higher power, whatever you want to call, we have that direct connection. It's built into a woman's body. That's part of our innate wisdom. And so it shows up more in the luteal phase and the menstruation phase, because that's an inward time. Like our bodies are designed to go inward to our intuitive wisdom, to what it is that we're working on. What are we here for? Our purpose? What are we building? What are we designing? That's an inward time to gather that inward in that wisdom and connect to that power. So it's that natural inclination that's going into that. And that's what it's calling you for. So anytime you feel that certain sort of way in that phase, that's what it's about. And what you've probably done is you've overbooked yourself because we're in such a society of push and go, and you've overbooked yourself and not honored that and looked at that. And so then now whatever has been called for you in that time is now coming up in front of people, which isn't bad. Like, it's just showing that humanness and that human side. And that time was very intentional and there's purpose around it. But that's what's happening. They have studies around women during menstruation and her brain, and it shows in studies the left and the right hemisphere even come together almost as if it's like a fusion. So thinking in our right hemisphere, that's our very creative side. That's the side that we attach to higher source, power, God, universe. And then this left side, that's the logical side. So in menstruation, when that's coming together, it's like, to me, I just look at it like, oh, there's a flow. It's coming down into the brain, coming over into the left side, into the logic, now for us to use when we go into follicular, into ovulation. So the energy is so wise in how it has this cycle of push and pull. And so it's an infradian rhythm that we live on, where we live in a circadian world, where it's been built on that circadian rhythm of a 24-hour cycle, but our bodies are infradian. So now we're wondering, after, we have a century of the Industrial Revolution, and now we're wondering why we're having problems. It's because we've left behind these ancient practices and this wisdom around a woman's body, and we've not been honoring it. And I think it's calling forth. And that's why more women are experiencing issues, because it's literally calling us. And we have to step into this to move into the next era and the next phase of humanity, especially for women empowerment. This is a huge thing for women empowerment. Huge for us as women. And if we start to live within our clock, I believe we will be able to accomplish some really powerful things, that instead of trying to live in this masculine world, live in that to accomplish what it is that we came here for.
Yeah.
I love it.
So whenever you're saying that, I'm like, okay, prayer feels like it can be so much more powerful during that time, when you're saying, we have this cohesiveness in our brains. And if we're listening to our body, when I started to fast, I did that whenever I was starting my period, because I just was like, I don't feel hungry right now anyway. So I'm just going to do this right now and see how long I can go. So I would love, from your professional perspective, when is the best time for women to fast, and how should we incorporate that into our month?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think you're right on point from the studies that have been coming out, that beginning to fast somewhere within your cycle. So if it feels right for you at the beginning of your cycle, then by all means. But I would say probably a couple of days in, when you start to get towards the end of your cycle, is when it's a great time to fast. From there all the way to the end of ovulation's a good time for a woman to fast. I wouldn't recommend fasting in the luteal phase. That's the one time where it's like, you really want to fuel that phase. But the fasting is really beneficial from the menstruation into ovulation. Intermittent fasting is really powerful. So you could do intermittent fasting, or you can do more extended fasting. I did 3 fasts last year, and it wasn't until the last fast that it came into me about fasting with the cycle. And my last fast was 11 days, and I started it right into my cycle. A couple days into my cycle was when I started it. It'll really help with, not only is it going to help with the detox process that you're going through, but it's going to help to prevent some of that hair loss, like that after effect that happens, that can sometimes be a side effect of fasting, which can be recovered, but preventing it to begin with is going to be more powerful.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I just drank water with ionic minerals in it. So I didn't worry about not getting the minerals that I needed. And is that why people's hair falls out? I mean, I didn't even know that was a thing.
So that can happen because you don't have any fats that are coming in. So a lot of those fats, other vitamins and nutrients like your biotin and different B vitamins, and there's other nutrients that help with hair growth and help to prevent hair fall. And so when we're taking those things away and just on water, or even if it's on a juice fast or anything else, when we're taking that away, then it can detract from those nutrients that need, and we may experience that down the road, which I did a little bit, like after, now that I know what I know about when to fast with the cycle, because I didn't the first 2 times and I did really big fasts, I did experience it some, but it's just from those fasts. So even if you eat a really low fat diet, so I've seen that with women, especially when I was in the cosmetology side, women that would diet and they would do like super low fats, they ended up with a lot of hair loss. So it's those fats that are really, really important, especially those omega-3s are really important for our hair. And that's what, when we're fasting, like we're not getting those specific fats or the nutrients that we need, so we can experience that hair fall that happens afterwards.
Yeah, and good fats are amazing. I don't know why
Yeah.
anybody'd want to kick them out of their diet.
Mhm.
Okay, so now talk to me how the skincare works. So you've taken all of this knowledge that you've just shared with us and you've put it into something that I get to put on my face. So how does
Yes.
that work?
Well, I kind of, can I talk about how it kind of came to be?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
if that helps tee up the story, I love a good story.
So last year when I was on my healing journey last year, I took the whole year, my husband and I, and that was when I was doing all the fast. It was at the beginning of the year, I did this really big fast. It was 15 days that I did this fast. And it was a series of smoothies down to juices, down to water, and then a refeeding out of that fast. And what I experienced was this like incredible clarity that happened in that time, that I was seeing my future self even in different ways. And I started to see myself looking up at the moon. And it was like the weirdest thing that I was like, why is this, like, why am I looking at the moon in this picture of myself? And I was older, I was on the beach, and I'm like, what is this about? And I had no idea. And I just kind of put it like on the shelf where I'm like, that's going to reveal itself to me. And as the year went on and I was studying women's health and seeing how much we're connected to the moon, all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, that has something to do with the moon and the feminine behind the moon. And then thinking of how do I want to bring what my skill set is to the market with my background in hair and skin. And then I'm like studying the skin more. And then I'm thinking, well, I've had fluctuations in my skin. I'm like other women, we would talk about it in like aesthetics and like hair. It was like really common concept that we were talking about. So then I started looking at the nutrients that the body needed in each phase. And then I was looking at how our digestion and our reproduction impacts the skin. And I'm like, holy shit, like, why aren't we formulating with ingredients for those phases, whether it's either specific products for the phase, like a serum, or a standalone product that's used throughout the cycle that helps to support its weakest state, which I would say would be menstruation, was what was kind of starting to come to me. And then I'm like, I really wanted a partner at the time. And, my sister and I, we've been super close. We lived together. How long of that was ago? I don't know, like 10 years ago, we lived together. Longer than that, maybe. And I would always say she was my best roommate I ever had. Like, we really became close then. And so as I'm sitting here thinking about all these things, I was like, well, maybe she'd want to do this with me. And so I call her up. It's like November. And I'm like, hey, I got tuned into a product developer coach that could help us take a product to market. And I'm thinking about this concept. Would you want to do this with me and do it in honor of mom? And so she's like, oh my gosh, yes, I totally want to do that. I should let her share too. I'm like talking so much.
No, you're good. I will say my background is design. So like I went to design school. I even took package design courses in school. I even took a self-study package. Something drew me to package design. There's something unique about this thing on the shelf, that there's a lot of products, there's a lot of things across the board. But what draws you in is that first interaction of said product. And I was just like, there's so much creativity out there. I want to do that. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. You know, I went into just graphic design. Now I'm in web and app development and doing design for that. But really, this is my passion. So when my sister came to me, I had, even after mom passed away, in my gut, like I was like, I want to do something in honor of her. I don't know what it is yet, but I want to do something. And my branding and designer brain, all I did was like, if I had a thought for a concept for a brand name, I wrote it down. I had this whole list of brand names. I didn't know what I was doing yet, but I was like, someday I'm going to do something. And so when my sister came to me at the end of last year, literally all she had to say was like, do you want to do something in honor of mom? I was like, absolutely. And then we just tuned right in. And the more she talked about our cycles and everything that has to do with that, I felt like I knew everything until we had deep dives into it. And I was like, how do I not know these things as a woman? Which is just baffling. And so like, I was the type that I'm like a doer. So I go. Even if I'm tired, I'm like, no, I can do it. Like, keep going. And so now it's like knowing those moments to give yourself grace, which is so much more empowering. Like she had said, that it's like, it's not a bad thing. You need it. Your body needs it. And so like, you just need to listen to it. And so basically like our products are just going to fuel those moments, those highs and those lows for you.
I love that. As you're talking, I'm just like, so I'm Kelsey and Crystal's Carrie.
Love that.
I do too. Big sisters.
Yeah. When I had done Casually Baked on my own, it was doing a podcast and cannabis education and educational media production around cannabis and hemp. And being a solopreneur sucked, and it was really hard and really lonely. And when I moved back to Texas and I was trying to have some of these conversations with people in Texas, they were scared off by my brand that, much like you, Kelsey, I'd created Casually Baked before I knew what I was going to do with it. And so I was like, okay, well, I need to recreate myself. I need to have a new brand, but I don't want to do this by myself. I have to have a partner. And so I told Crystal, I'm like, hey, I need to do Soil Sisters, but I need a sister to do it with me. Are you in? Because I need a partner. And so we have had this parallel experience to you ladies. It's been fun.
I love that. I mean, I just feel like Kelsey's such a gift, and she says to me, I'm such a gift to her. And I'm like, no, you're like way more of a gift. So I just feel like I've got all these words and all these ideas, and I don't know how to put it into a pretty package, and she can like put it into this pretty package. And it's
and I couldn't do this without her knowledge. So, I mean, it is really a dynamic duo for what we're doing. And I'm so excited about it too, because even when we got in our sample products, I mean, I use like shea butter, and I use like the bare bones of like the cleanest thing that you can get. And I'm like, I used our product and it's very clean, and I don't want to use anything else. And I ran out of our samples, and I'm like, we need to get this out there, because like my skin is not the same, even from just using shea butter alone. It was not like that. It's so much different. It was so much softer. It was so much like, I don't know. I feel like I had like a baby's skin. I was like, this is going to be real good.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to try it. During the shutdown, when they were making us all wear masks, and my skin changed and it broke out like crazy. I had to go down to the bare bones of, I was just using apricot seed oil on my skin and aloe vera gel. Anything else, my face was swollen, rashy. It was just out of control.
She was in California, so she really had to wear a mask. I didn't. I wouldn't.
And I've always had great skin. I never have had problems with my skin. So this was new to me in 2020. So y'all talking about this, I'm like, oh, I'm excited to try it, because I know that you've used all of these markers and you've thought about all of these things. And I feel like, as someone who has super sensitive skin, I can try it, and I look forward to seeing what that's like.
Yeah. And one thing to me, like from a design background, there's so much intention behind design, and that's how my brain functions. And so when it comes to our products and our product line, like when my sister talks about all the ingredients or the things or what it's serving, the purpose that it serves, there's so much intention behind each individual ingredient and then combining them together. There's even intention in that. And so it serves such a bigger purpose for the products because it's not just a product. Like it literally is functioning, doing something, has a purpose. Like there's a reason behind it. It's solving problems, what have you. So it's almost easier to come up with a product in that way too, because you are doing something with more intention.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And in the cannabis industry, we call that the entourage effect. How each of the pieces has its own purpose and serves the whole. And
Mhm.
so, much like these two sister duos here,
Yeah.
the entourage effect, each of us having skills that the other one needs that
Yeah.
helps the whole business function and run.
And the intention and the care that is put into every bit of research that is done and the mixing and the coordinating and the design. I mean, it really is all of it together is lending to the product that is you're just offering
Mhm.
for someone to receive. And it really is up to us to receive all the benefits that are given, especially in such a very conscious product. So I'm really excited to try it.
Thank you. We're
Yeah.
excited about it coming. So, one of the areas that I felt called to first, so we do plan on having at this point stuff for body, face, and hair. But when I first sat with it, and I sat with how everything that goes on our skin goes in our body. So, if we think about or know about how the body works, when we eat something, we have a filter system that filters out what it is that we're putting in our body. And, that's your liver, your kidney, your bile, like all that waste that goes out. It's designed to kind of be a catch-all for what isn't working for you. But when we put something on our skin, it goes right into the bloodstream. And they have now studies showing that these toxic chemicals that we have on the market in our creams and washes and serums and everything else, they have studies literally saying what it's impacting. And it will impact a person in their weak area because it's going into the bloodstream and it's traveling around the whole entire body and it's hitting on those organs and those body systems. So as I sat with it further, I was like, okay, so then I could build it from a way to not only help with, say, softness or redness reduction, but also kind of thinking, how is it going to impact the body? So I started to look at herbs and oils and what they did for reproduction as well, and butters and what they did for reproduction and for digestion, because digestion is such a huge part of reproduction. So I was looking at all of that and seeing the skin effects and kind of crossing those around and seeing which ones cross over that support our reproduction. And then I found a study, and I love this study, and this is what the foundation of our first product is going to be, is it was around women's skin during menstruation. And they had this study showing that the more irregular a woman's cycle is, the drier her skin becomes. So we already go through a dry state when we menstruate. So if you think about it and you're releasing all of those toxins and that blood and everything's releasing for you, in order to detox, the body uses water. So the body's using water all the time. We're like made up of 70% water, and all of our organs function because of this water. So this release state that we go through is taking that water and it's drawing from places within our body. And so it will draw from the skin. And so the more irregular we become, the drier we become. When we become dry, so drying our skin, drying our organs, drying our GI tract, that's when ailments show up. So the root cause of every single disease or symptom or discomfort that's out there, hydration is the very first thing that happened in order to get you there. So then now we take this really dry state that's happening in menstruation by design, And so I took that and I decided to build it with the herbs, the butters, and the oils that would support the hydration that the skin needs in that time. And then I looked at what nutrients each phase needs. So in menstruation, the body's calling for more magnesium, it's calling for vitamin C. And so I looked at the plants and like even researched what minerals and what vitamins are in those, and then picked them accordingly to go into this product. So literally this first product, it's a body product. It is designed to support the woman's skin that is menstruating and beyond. So it's basically, to me, what I see as like a pivotal product. I didn't feel comfortable with making it just use it during this phase. I felt more comfortable with, hey, this supports this phase, but it's great all month long because we need hydration all month long. We don't just need hydration in menstruation. We need it all month long, but we really need it then. I also packed it with a lot of anti-inflammatories because if you think about like when you're detoxing, like what do they tell you when you go to get a massage or something? They're like, drink a lot of water. You might notice like this stuff coming up. So stuff's coming up. We need anti-inflammatory to keep it calm, to keep our cortisol down, like just like lower all the inflammation that's happening. So I put anti-inflammatories in there. And then this last class of herbs has been really fascinating to me. And I really think it is so beautiful for women, but adaptogens. So I don't know if you all have heard of adaptogens, but adaptogens are a class of herbs that help with stress resilience. And as we look at a woman's cycle, so the luteal phase into menstruation is a time that it's naturally low resilience on purpose. And so I'm like, why don't we have stress resilience built into our products so that here now, because think of how it goes into our bloodstream and it supports our body. I'm like, I want some adaptogens in there. So I picked a couple adaptogens that also translate for the skin as well. And so I included those. So here now is this body product that when we're at our lowest state and our stress resilience is low, and we could potentially be extremely dry and have flare-ups of problems in our skin and elsewhere, here's a body product that's going to hydrate us. It's going to protect our skin with good stress resilience plants and anti-inflammatories, and then has the nutrients that the body's literally calling for. So every single phase, that's how I've been looking at it, is breaking down the nutrients that are needed, what plants, herbs, and butters have this in it. And I've started to create like a file of each of the phases where I can pick this stuff to begin to formulate what it is that we're going to come out with. So like I mentioned, our first to market, our pilot product is going to be a body product. But right now we have in works an exfoliant. So an exfoliant for a woman's skin is great outside of menstruation. So I would almost even recommend, like when we menstruate, what should go on our body is the very minimal amount of stuff, and it should just be hydrating is what we do. And then as we enter follicular phase after menstruation and everything's turning over, that's a great time to incorporate our exfoliants into it. Why we wouldn't want to use these during menstruation is because the body's in a rest state. It does not want you to take anything and force it to do something. So just leave it alone, like just hydrate it. So that's some of the education that's going to come out for women. We're already doing that in our emails and some of our social posts because there's a lot of education that has to come around this whole concept and how to care for ourselves. So this exfoliant that we're designing, I looked at what we needed in follicular phase. So remember how I talked about how it was a time of spring, like just this budding is happening. So I looked at some fruit enzymes. So papaya and pineapple were two that really jumped out at me. They're so great for that time and that phase with the nutrients that are in it. So that's going to be two of the ingredients that are in our exfoliant. So I was like playing around and testing different types of exfoliants. And one, we are working with a chemist. She sent me like our first line of samples for the exfoliant. And the first time I used it was so rough that even my skin was like, no, like it kind of like got a little hivey. And I was like, oh, my body doesn't like it. So when I sat with that, I was like, oh, then too, thinking about how a woman's skin is thinner than our male counterpart because our pH is different than men. And then the thing that makes skin thicker is testosterone. And we only have a couple of days of this spike of testosterone where men have it all the time. So I'm like, oh, we need a really mild exfoliant. I would even dare say that no woman should ever use a rough exfoliant. Like, it's
Sister, I wish we would have known this when our father was telling us to
Get
thicken
a
up
thicker
our
skin.
skin.
yeah, I mean, he's talking from his experience. Like,
Exactly.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, if we're talking to a woman who is no longer menstruating, they're like in menopause or their cycles really off kilter or whatever, what kind of skincare advice do you have for those ladies?
I would say a woman who's in menopause is going to be just the same as a woman that's menstruating, because remember how I said all the hormones are low? So woman's estrogen changes when she goes into menopause, that goes away. It changes into different hormones. And so what I would say for that type of skin is they need a lot of hydration, would be first and foremost, anti-inflammatory, and wound healing. So aging is a wounded state by nature. So we're in a chronic wounded state. And there's a lot of plants out there that help with wound healing. So like one of my favorites actually is helichrysum. And these wound healing plants, comfrey is another one. Chamomile is a great one. So these wound healing plants for a woman that's older will help to keep and nourish her skin and keep it as fresh as possible, as opposed to a woman that's in a very dehydrated state when she's older. She's going to have really deep fine lines and wrinkles. Like, that just shows off like how dehydrated she is. So the more that hydration can come on her body, on her skin, even into her nutrients that she's eating, the better her skin and her body's going to go through or be in menopause. Digestion's typically one of the hardest hit systems when we go into menopause. Most women will experience digestive issues when they're in menopause because they are so dry and in such a dehydrated state.
But if they are eating properly, they shouldn't have that, right? Is it because we're not staying hydrated and not eating correctly?
Hydration's a huge thing, and it's just aging. It's just aging what's happening, and more people are experiencing digestive issues than ever before. So if we think about going into those older years, and now you have chronic years of digestive issues, and then you go into that, and now your hormones are going away, you may experience that more.
Well, and I guess what I'm asking is, I mean, I believe our bodies can regenerate themselves if they're
100%.
fueled properly.
Correct.
Yes.
So this whole idea of we're all slowly dying and this is just going to happen to you and you're just going to have gut issues, I don't buy into that. You know,
If
for
we,
me, when go ahead.
well, what we're doing as soil sisters is helping get the minerals back in the food
Yes.
so that the food that you're eating actually feeds your body. Because what you're saying, yes, is probably what 90% of the population is experiencing,
Yes.
but it is only because we are
Yes.
completely depleted of any nutritional value in our food.
Yes.
In, you know, like the chemicals and the poisonings and the no nutrition in the food, like that is the problem. So yes, that is where we are right now. What we're doing, sister, is helping people understand the value of healthy soil and how to feed the microbes in the soil so they can feed the microbes in the plant that feeds the animal that feeds the human. So yeah, like it is what it is right now, but there are solutions.
Yes, no, 100%. It's totally in eating whole foods and using whole foods.
Yeah.
So that will help as we age and as those hormones change over and help our skin and our bodies. So totally they're tracking with you. And that's the answer. It's right there in our soil.
I love it. And what you're talking about is so important because it is, you put it on your skin and it goes right into your body, into your bloodstream. I love it. And I love everything that you're talking about. And I see the value in that and I understand that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have to swallow the pill. I can just put the lotion on my face.
Yeah.
I can just put it on my body
Yeah.
and know. And you know, that when I started making the beef tallow lotion, like I felt a difference. You just feel like
Yeah.
when you're using a quality product, it changes. Like rather than squirting the brand name lotion that has the high fragrance in it and you rub it on your skin. I mean, there's just a different when you're adding these nutrients and the minerals and the herbs that you're talking about. Like I am very, very excited to try
Yeah.
this.
And can
It's
you talk, Carrie, about that? Like some of the products that people love, they're bougie products or stuff that they've been using. What are the effects of the things that are in these mainstream products? You know, what are their effects on the body? Why would people want to shed those and go to a purely botanical line?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, my perception and how I see it, and what I've learned in my studies, is that anything that's not whole, so whole coming from the earth, the body sees it as an invader. So these things that are synthetically made in the lab, although they may give perhaps instant results, the long term, they're always going to be creating some sort of a long term imbalance. So you get immediate results, but then this long term. So, say, like your high-end anti-age cream, that when you look at the label and you have this huge laundry list of these foreign ingredients, maybe some actives, because some of these brands are starting to pick up on this and they're throwing in like 4 actives to 30 ingredients, but all the rest is sandwiched by these synthetic ingredients. And so then it's going on the body and the body does not recognize it. And so it sees it as an invader. And then it's going to impact somewhere within that human body where we have a weak space. It's going to impact. And at first, it's probably imperceptible. Like it's not noticeable because the body can handle it, has a filtration system. But then you keep doing it, and then you age and you get older and you keep doing it and you keep doing it. And then all of a sudden, things start showing up. And so that's what's happening. And why we're seeing things show up later is because of all the stuff that's going on. And so, why somebody would want to switch and use something that's plant based is because it works and it nourishes the skin and it nourishes the body. And when it's the right formulation, so the right formulations are key, and the user who needs that formulation. So not all plant is great for everybody. There's going to be some people that don't respond well to my product. It'll be somebody else's product that they respond to. That's how it is for everything. But the body will recognize what it should when it's in a whole version from a plant.
Outstanding.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
totally.
it does.
Well, you know, synthetic fertilizers make plants lazy because they don't have to produce the sugars to attract the biology that then cycle nutrients. So this is the same thing. You're just putting chemicals in there, but it's not like helping your body do the thing that it needs to do. It's just interrupting it. So I love it's just the natural whole foods that then your body can take and use rather than the chemicals that confuse and really make, I mean, in the soil and for a plant, literally makes the plant like a drug addict because it just gets that pop. But it's not something that it can be sustained like they just gave it to you. Whereas the microbes in the soil cycle the nutrients, they eat them and then they're eaten and they release plant available nutrients. So this is, I love it, which is why I was super excited to have this conversation because it's same. We're talking soil, you're talking skin, and it's beautiful.
Well, and it's so linked. Like it really just hit me there when you said about how these synthetic fertilizers make the plants lazy and not have to produce, if this is what you said, right, the certain minerals and the vitamins that belong in that
the
plant.
Sugars that then feed the microbes that give them
those minerals.
The minerals, like it's like nutrient cycling. And the plants give sugar, and all of the bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and nematodes are all taking those sugars, and the bacteria eat them, and then something eats the bacteria and releases nitrogen that's available to the plant. And so that life cycle in the soil of these microbes that breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide, I mean, it's a system. And when you interrupt that system, then what happens? Like they're just waiting. Like,
Yeah.
okay, where's the next stuff coming from? Like I'm not doing what naturally
Yes.
nature knows to do because you have interrupted with some chemical that I don't recognize and that I can't reproduce.
Yes. That's like, I mean, literally, as you're like talking about the plant, like this is what the concept that I see about the human body. So, for example, and this is what's coming up while you were talking, is chemical sunscreens. So that was actually one of the first things that my mom made when she went on the whole clean thing. Like I still have it with her handwriting and label that she made for us. But I've been looking at that. So what you just said about the plant is exactly what happens for the human body. And this is how I think we've come with such a reliance on chemical sunscreens, is that when we're not using UV from plants, so the body will take what the plant has, so what the plant has grown with, the body will take it, and then it becomes like that within our body. So when we apply UV from plants, it goes into the cells, into our cell walls, and it turns into this protection that we have that's almost like a natural one. I'm not saying that you could be outside for 8 hours and not have a problem, but I am saying just what you said about the plant, that it's a smart technology that happens within the body that now builds into the cell walls to give us protection when we're out and about in a general setting outside and our bodies become lazy. So just like that plant, it's the same thing. So to me, going back to what Joanna had asked about why not using these bougie creams, is we're creating a lazy state within our body that's a constant reliance on these products. It's now an addictive state where, just like the plant, our bodies are waiting for the next time we apply it. And when we don't apply it now, we begin to see the effects because it doesn't know how to do its job.
Yeah. This is a true
I love
story.
it, just solving all the problems.
Oh my God.
So does that mean that you have a sunscreen in the lineup as well?
I have plans for that. So like I said, in like all my organization of my thoughts and ideas and the plants, like I've already started a document with the UV plants. There's like over 250 plants that give UV protection. They were using this stuff for thousands of years. So then I even went further and researched. I'm like, when did the first chemical sunscreen come out? Well, it came out in the 1930s. I'm not going to say who, because I don't want to say anything about anybody's brand. But it came out in the 1930s. And so I was sitting with it and I'm like, they're a really big name now. And so they came out with this chemical sunscreen and switched the mindset of people onto this. And now there's like a whole bunch of regulations around sunscreen and what it has to be and what gives protection and all
And
of
that's
it.
the power of marketing and programming of people. And, and that's part of what I do as a marketer. And I'm sure Kelsey can speak to this, is if I don't believe in it, I can't work on it because it does not feed my soul. It makes me feel terrible. I mean, that's why I quit my job, gave away my things, and left the country 12 years ago. It was like, this doesn't feel good anymore. So when you know this information, you can't not do different things. So I appreciate being surrounded by people now who are awake and want to share good information and ways of consciously aging. Y'all call your products conscious beauty. And, the whole concept of conscious aging is body, mind, spirit, planet. We're constantly thinking about all of those things and their interaction with each other and how we affect that. So I think that in and of itself makes somebody beautiful.
Yes.
Well, ladies, we need to wrap up, but I want to make sure that we plug all of the things so that people can stay tuned to purchase or maybe pre-order your products. I know your website, truefemmecollective.com. And that's TRUE Femme, FEMME collective.com. What are y'all doing right now to kick off sales?
Kelsey, do you want to share?
Yeah, so right now we are still getting our package all sorted out. We have a email subscription via our website where we not only send out weekly emails that are very insightful and helpful and tips and everything about the cycle, but also will let people know where we are in the progress, when we're going to launch. So that'll be the key thing, to sign up for our emails on our website so that you can know when we are actually going to launch. But our goal is end of the year, holidays, that kind of thing. And then we're on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and working on our TikTok as well. So follow us on there, True Femme Collective. And, we're so excited to launch. So hopefully everyone else is too.
It's funny when you said we'll launch around the holidays. And I want to say, I don't even know when they start anymore. I feel like all the marketing stuff, it was like Black Friday, and now everyone's inched that up. So sometime in November, is that the
I will say
holiday
it'll
season?
probably end up being closer to the end of the year. But we are so close, and we're so anxious to get this out there as well, because we've had our physical formula and product nailed down for a few months. It's just now, nailing down those loose ends and, button things up and all the things that come into it. But, we're so excited. So
yes. I lived that when I had a muscle rub with my best friend, and I spent a couple of holiday seasons being so frustrated that it was like it didn't come together in time. We missed the holiday thing. So it takes a thick skin to launch a new product. So ladies, I'm sending you all the good vibes and
smooth sailing.
Yes. And we will patiently wait for whenever it is ready.
Oh, thanks. We love that. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Is there anything that we didn't ask you that's important before we wrap up? Did we do a good job?
Oh, you did a
Did we cover it all?
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
We do a good job. Did you enjoy talking?
You did great. And I love how we just brought together everything that we're talking about, like as above, so below, and the soil and our skin and our body. And it's all about life. And
truly, it's all connected. It really is.
So great. I'm so happy to meet you, ladies. Thank you for being here with us.
We're happy to be connected. And then when you need face models, we'll share our progress.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
All right, thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank you too.
Connect with the Soil Sisters at txsoilsisters.co. Submit questions, guest or show ideas, and sponsorship inquiries. The Soil Sisters podcast was created and produced by Joanna Nuding. Editing and sound design are in the capable hands of the PodConnects Podcast Network.